What is going on, military cash flow family? What's going on today with you, Mike?
What's up, man? I'm chilling. I'm sweating in here. I don't know what's going on with the AC, but the back of my kneecaps is sweaty, bro. It is not comfortable.
The back of the kneecaps, man.
Back of the kneecaps. Just wet. No, it's all good, man. I'm chilling, man. We're rocking and rolling on the loan side of the house. And I just recently joined the TikTok, man.
Oh, yeah, the dance moves. Man. If you guys haven't checked out our TikTok or Mike's TikTok, he's getting in there. Yeah, he's getting there, giving the dance moves, man. He's giving away all the moves. Dude. He's about to put on a tutorial, man. So
I might have to. Nah, man. But everybody's been telling me to get on it for the longest, so I'm late to the game. But I'm just having fun with it, trying to drop obviously value like we always do on all the platforms, and then just trying to put a little entertainment in there. So y'all follow me on TikTok, show me some love. But besides that, man, I've been taking it day by day. How's everything going with you?
Everything's good, man. Just hanging out with the family, doing the same old. I did actually just get back from Flip Hacking Live last week.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great time. It's put on by the Seven Figure Flippers, Bill Allen and his crew. So we got a bunch of great guests that are about to come on from that I met from that event, right? It's a great time, man. We talk about networking all the time and how important that is, and going to these conferences and going to meet new people and, learning about real estate, right? Just learning about real estate. You guys talk about, just the Army profession in general, or any military profession, right? You always want to be learning and studying. The same thing with this, right? Treat it like a profession, and that's what you're going to get out of it, right? So you go and you get those education, you go and you do that networking and stuff, and you get a lot out of it in return. So learn so much stuff. For those of you who don't know, I'm jumping back into wholesaling. You guys probably saw the video that just went out. It's round 2 for me. I was up in Fort Drum last time. Didn't really work out that great because I was PCSing and went overseas and stuff. But now I'm back at it. Really excited about it. I used a lot of what we learned from that event to implement into this new this time going in, right? We just hired 2 assistants. So we have 2 people on board. They're going to be helping us out, growing the business. And I don't know, I'm really excited to get rocking and rolling. So
yeah, man, that event looked amazing. And I'm surprised. I'm not really surprised, but just kind of shocked at how many people who attended were actually in the service. They're service members,
oh my
right?
gosh, man,
it's about ridiculous.
If I had to guess, it was probably about, one third of that room was probably service members. So if you guys don't know, we've had David Perret on the stage from Military to Millionaire. We've had Adam Whitney from on our podcast twice. Actually, both of them were actually speakers at that event, right? So when they got up, they say, hey, shout out to the military members. And for those who don't know, also the person that owns the 7-figure flipping company, Bill Allen, he's also in the military as well. So when they got up and they said shout out to the military, it seemed like half the daggone room stood up, right? So it was really, really quick. It was really, really great. Met a lot of our old guests. Bob Sleeves was there. We had Marcus Long was there. Johnny Lynham was there. Who else?
Alex Felice.
Alex Felice was there. Obviously Dave Perret, Adam Whitney. Who else was there? I'm probably forgetting somebody. And if I did,
quite a few, man.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was a great turnout. It was about 700 people there. I'd say about a third of them were military. It seemed like, at least, or somewhat military affiliated. So, it was a great event. Had a great time.
I'm definitely going to be making my way out there next year. I went to a couple of different conferences, man, but that one looked amazing. So, yeah, man. So for all the military folks looking to get out there and start, obviously we always talk about networking. That might be a great entry level event. Because as you start to experiment with some bigger pockets, I didn't go this year, but bigger pockets is a little pricey, I will admit, right? So you may not want to just have that one be your first one. Although it'd be a good event, you may want to shop around a little bit. That might be the one for you guys. The 7-figure flippers, house hacking? Flip hacking.
Yeah, flip hacking live. Yeah.
Awesome, man.
It's good stuff. But speaking of the great people that I met and the great new people that we met, right? Today we got a great guest that we just met. We linked up with him through social media, right? His name is Joseph Danza, right? So great guy. He's a chaplain in the Army, right? So he works for the Navy, but he's a chaplain in the Army. So it's a really weird concept. You'll hear about it when we get to the video, but he talks, I mean, one phrase you'll hear constantly throughout this is cash flow is king, right? And with that, I mean, what you got, Mike?
Yeah, man, this is, so for everybody, I mean, whoever wants multiple millions of dollars worth of real estate across multiple states, he talks about how he did it in, 13 years. Now, some of you, that may seem like a long time. Some of you realize how short that really is. Think about 10 years ago. Where the hell were you? That is gone like that, right? The biggest thing that he talks about and he continues to hit is the clarity that he has. And I know I hit on it a lot too, because it's just so impressive, because I personally feel that pain. You know what I mean? I've tried it all. I've tried a lot of things with not having clarity and easily getting distracted, and knowing, I say this often, and Dan, called me out on it. If I could go back, I can make the same amount of money that my entire portfolio makes with like 5 to 10 Airbnbs. Believe me, and I know that sounds kind of misconstrued, but it's true. The way that these Airbnbs are cash flowing, and if I was strategic with it. Well, he's super strategic, 100% owner of all these properties, guys. That's damn near unheard of, right? So this is going to be a nugget-filled episode. Obviously, I can't do it any justice. So without further ado, let's get to it.
What's going on, Military Cash Flow family? Today, we have Joseph Danza in the house with us today. Really appreciate you coming on, Joseph. Please let us know a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing.
Thanks for having me. So I'm the owner of Simplified Real Estate Investments. So we are a East Coast company that we span all along the East Coast. We focus on 4 pillars. We really focus on cash flow. So we do long-term rentals, short-term rentals, we do property management, and now we're jumping into the multifamily space. And so while I'm doing all of that, I'm also still working my 9-to-5 job. I work for the Navy full-time, and I'm also in the reserves as an Army chaplain.
Wait a minute. Wait. You said your full-time job is the Navy, and then you said you work as an Army reservist. Explain that, please.
Yeah, it's crazy. And somehow I managed to juggle it all with my teams. But so during the day, I'm a program manager, and I run some of the Navy's IT systems that we've got across the enterprise. And then on the weekends and the evenings, I'm an Army chaplain taking care of families across the East Coast.
Now I got it. Okay, now it makes sense.
Yeah, I was about to say, how do you rock both uniforms? But it makes sense. So tell us a little bit about your background. So, I mean, it sounds like you have a lot of knowledge in the real estate world, but did you always start off knowing that you wanted to invest in real estate? Or what was that background as a child, I guess, getting into this field?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So I've been doing this since I was a kid. My parents, they were in the Army. My dad was in the Army, and then he retired and he jumped into real estate. And so, I kind of got a flavor of it, watching what they did, going and helping, showing apartments, taking care of their properties. I got a little taste of everything. And I didn't have a real interest when I was younger. But I think I was around, I'd say maybe 18, 19 years old. I started to get the bug for it. And then I finally took the plunge when I was in college, and I bought my first property. My parents were my first investors. And so we jumped in. We bought this house in 2008. The market kind of, got a little shaky there. And so, we pulled through. So it's been quite the experience. And, my portfolio has only grown.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So understanding that when parents are doing something in front of us, a lot of times, one of two things are going to happen. Either we're going to latch on and we're going to become addicted with it, right along with them, or we're going to kind of rebel. And it sounded like in the beginning phases, you kind of rebelled. What was that like? You said you didn't find interest until 18 or 19. Yeah. So when you were walking those properties as a child, were you just kind of just following your parents along, or were you actually tasked to certain duties or whatever the case is?
Oh yeah, I was tasked with certain duties. It was like, if you live in this household, you're gonna do certain things, and that's going to be showing apartments and taking care of those apartments. That's what put food on the table.
I absolutely love that, man. So you were exposed to this at a young age, man.
Oh yeah.
And that's pretty uncommon, right?
Yeah.
What I love about that so much is because that's what we all kind of aspire to be, right? At least I have kids, man. I want my kids in that exact same position, right? A lot of the things that I'm doing right now, I'm trying to position myself to put my children in the same position that you're in, right? I just think that's awesome. And a lot of us, sometimes we don't really think about how much of an effect, like the little things that you do as a parent, influences your children, right? So now you are a second generation real estate investor, and I'm sure your children or whoever you have with you is going to learn the same thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, my parents were so influential in this. And I mean, I remember even as a kid, they would bring us to the conferences. Like we would go and it was like our family vacation / real estate conference. And it all worked out. And, I'm just really glad that, I finally, I guess, got smarter after working a 9 to 5, realizing that, it's not all that it's cracked up to be.
Shout out to mom and dad, I hope they're watching this so I can give them a clap round of applause to you. Shout out to you guys. So
seriously, what was the pivotal point for you that clicked at 18 or 19? What was like that one little thing where you said, you know what, forget the 9 to 5, it's real estate for me?
Yeah, I think it was just, working for people. It's hard working for people and taking direction and orders. I mean, it's even hard in the military too, but yeah. I think it's just, you wake up one day and you realize, you can do it. And I had that push and that support from my parents and we took a plunge and I'm still here. I'm still swimming. And so.
Excellent. Excellent. So, well, walk us through like your first dip into real estate. You said you bought that first, I'm not sure what type of deal it was, but you bought that first deal in college. What was your mind like? I mean, to be in college and actually be already forward thinking, like, hey, I need to buy an investment property. Can you walk us through that a little bit, where your thoughts were, and then also how it went for you?
Yeah. I had been watching, my parents for a long time. And then, this is when like HGTV kind of took off as well with all the flipping shows. And so, I didn't want to do what my parents did with the apartments. I wanted to go flip because that's what everybody was doing. And that was, I didn't have all that forward thinking, it was just kind of impulse decisions. And I learned very quickly when, we jumped in and, the market, tanked basically. And so, we were renovating the property. I learned all about contractors, who not to hire, who not to hire. I mean, the timeline that was only supposed to have been 60 days ended up being, 9 months. We were over schedule. The cost overruns were ridiculous. And all I could think of was, I've got to sell this property as the market tanked. And, we put it up on the market to try to flip it. And, it just didn't work. The market was softening, nothing was selling. And, and I had to pivot at some point and it didn't hit me. It was really when my back was up against the wall, did I consider renting out the property? And this was a single family, house and that, we had purchased and, it was a very inexpensive property. It was like $45,000. I was just proud at the time that, I was able to go get a loan for the property. I scraped up everything that I had been saving from my summer jobs and I went and purchased it. And then I ran those credit cards up to make all those renovations happen. And, I mean, there's just so many things. I look back now, like I would never do that way. It's just like all those lessons learned and I get to share that story over and over with folks that I meet.
You got to give us a couple, just give us a couple of those lessons learned.
Yeah, I think really it's having those multiple exit strategies. When I went into this, it was flipping. And that was the only thing that I thought of. And instead I should have been thinking, flipping, renting, what else can I do to the property? Now you can do like a BRRRR, or you could do like an Airbnb, house hacking. I mean, there's so many ways to do it today that I just wasn't thinking about, 13 years ago when I started this. And, it would have made life so much easier if I had known that. And then I think another lesson learned is just making sure you have the right contractors in place, right? It was just painful, painful trying to get through, renovation. And then on top of it, the people I hired, they were much older than me. And so it's like, let's take you for a ride. And, but, I had my parents there, who kind of guided me through the process, but still going through all those hurdles, it was just difficult to get through that.
You said those contractors could smell fear, huh? They could smell the
Absolutely.
wet behind the ears. But so this was your first deal, right?
Yeah, that was my first deal.
All right. So everybody listening, rewind that bad boy, because this was his first deal. Most people would hear that and they would cower down. They say, oh, real estate is too hard. It's not for me. I can't do this. Nobody makes money. But instead, you got very creative and you pushed forward. So what was it that made you decide, even after that deal, you made it work? What made you decide to keep going with real estate?
So the thing that really helped was once the property was stabilized and once it was cash flowing. So, I got renters in there eventually. I mean, and I think that's what people forget too. Like the markets are going up and up and the rents continue to go up and up. But when there's a downturn in the market, excess inventory, rents will go down and the property still has to cash flow regardless of how much you paid for it. And because it's still cash flowed, I was able to go to the bank. I was able to refinance. I pulled out all of my investment, paid everything off. I still had money left over. And then I had the returns that were coming in every single month, my monthly cash flow. So it was like infinite returns. And then the light bulb clicked. It was like, I can do this. I can do more of these, even though it was very, very painful, the first go around. And so, and I went back and I took that money that I got from that property and I reinvested it into the next property. And so it's just been kind of, I call it my infinite returns that I started out with.
Is the way.
Yes, it really is. And this breaks it down to I love what you're saying, because, no matter how bad it gets, as long as you take a step back and look at it objectively, just look at the numbers. How is it performing? Ultimately, you saw that no matter how much pain that you went through, you were still able to get an infinite return, essentially get all of your money back out. And that's the name of the game, guys. We only invest in real estate for that long-term wealth. So as long as the numbers make sense, let's party. So I love that. And you kept moving forward. Now, did your strategy change completely at that point in time? Did you still focus on flips? Have you ever focused on flips? Or did you just say, from now on, I'm going for cash flow?
It changed everything. And so now I just focus on cash flow. When I go out there and I'm looking at properties today, whether the big apartment complexes or, the vacation rentals, cash flow is king. And that's the only way I go about it, because equity is here today and it can be gone tomorrow. We watched that in 2008 where, a property that my first one, because the ARV on that was about $150,000. And when the market crashed, it was worth about $80,000. I mean, it wasn't very much, but I was able to pull everything out. I was very lucky at that time because it was just a low entry cost. And so that's why we just focus on cash flow, because cash flow is what keeps any deal alive.
And I love that you keep hitting on that. Like, we focus on cash flow. Even when you opened up, I meant to touch on that. As soon as you opened up, you're like, hey, I'm a cash flow investor. I focus on cash flow. Not too many investors come on and say specifically that. Like, it's usually, I focus on a specific niche within real estate. So I either focus on apartment complexes, or I focus on Airbnb, or I focus on long-term holds or mobile home parks or storage unit, or whatever the asset type is. You're like, yo, screw an asset type. I'm focused on cash flow. So I really appreciate that. So so we talked about like the thing that made that switch to, I guess, switch from flipping onto cash flow. But what made you switch between other asset types, right? Because as focusing on cash flow, you can work within a bunch of different asset types. So what made that change for you?
I think it's just diversification, right? I believe diversification in all ways, in all directions. I've applied that in all areas of my life, and it works in my business as well. It's, I saw like 2020, everybody talks about COVID, depending on who you talk to, they'll tell you that that was a disruption in the real estate cycle and it reset the real estate cycle, depending on who you talk to, right? And so for me, it was a wake-up call. I watched my entire company that has been just generating cash flow constantly. And, it's watching it come to a halt, basically, as moratoriums went into place, as people could not travel. And so then that's when I kind of realized, I'm like, I have to have multiple streams of income. And so from 2020 on, we've been focused on more diversification, more strong assets where there's a lot more cash flow, a lot more margins to make sure that, the bank accounts are going to be there when the cash flow stops, if it stops. And that's what's kept this business going all this time is really the cash flow and these different assets. Looking at the vacation rental space, I mean, the returns are amazing, but they're very volatile. And if you look at the property management side that we do, it's really great. I don't own the asset, I take care of the asset, but I take a commission off it, and it reduces the level of risk. And so it allows the portfolio to balance out, not only from a cash flow perspective, but also from a risk perspective. When you carry so much debt, you're risky to, a bank, to other investors, depending on, what they're looking for. And so this just allows us to, level out the portfolio. And just like the big apartment complexes that we're jumping into, it just allows for more cash flow, more diversification. We're going back to the basics again. The vacation rental spaces are like, they're nice to haves, but the apartment complexes, you got to live somewhere, right? And they're just on a larger scale, and they're just a little bit more easier to manage because there's a big property management company that handles a lot of it.
So I love this because you're talking about a journey that you went through as an investor, starting off fairly small, right, with that single family, and then gradually growing over time. I mean, there's so much here we can unpack, but you've hit on one thing consistently. You keep talking about leveling out the portfolio, making sure your debt level is fairly low, diversification. So this is a question I have that might be a little bit left field, but what is your general rule of thumb as far as keeping your loan to value at what percentage across the portfolio?
So I'm all about leverage. I'm not about paying down the mortgages. I'm about, as little cash I can put into the property. So I typically stick to that 75% loan to value. And there's not a rush to pay down the mortgages. Maybe the primary residence, I'm focused on paying it down a little bit more, but the rest of them, all I'm focused on is putting as little cash into the property as possible, making the improvements, doing the forced appreciation, which is like really the renovations on the property, getting the value up, refinancing, pulling that money out, and then redeploying it to another project. And so that's kind of where we stick, around that 70 to 75% loan to value.
That's perfect. For those listening, for loan to value for the portfolio that you guys may or may not be familiar with, it's essentially how much debt is on the property towards the value. And the general loan amount for most properties, most investment properties, will be around that 75 to 80. So you're just saying right around that 70, 75, especially on the apartment complex. That's pretty normal. And so when you're looking at cash flow, then are you measuring that based on a cash flow dollar amount or a cash on cash return percentage? Just curious.
It depends on the asset class. So like the vacation rental space, we're looking at cash on cash. How soon can we pull that cash out? The apartment complexes, we're looking at cash on cash again, but we're also looking at IRR, all those metrics to kind of make sure that the money is hard at work and that we get it back as soon as possible.
I love it. I love it. It's all about knowing your metrics. And I think
Absolutely.
you speak, mountains to that, because you're showing that you can pick almost any asset out of a bunch of them as long as you understand your metrics and what it is that you're looking for.
Yeah.
What I really like is a lot of people think, you cannot diversify within real estate itself, right? Most people are like, oh, well, I don't want all my assets in real estate. I want, 30% real estate, 30% stocks, and I don't know, 30% bonds, right? Well, you can diversify if you would like to, right? You can diversify yourself from any kind of market correction just within real estate alone. We talked about the different asset classes, right? Would you mind going over some of the different asset classes that you're investing in, and then what that would look if there was a market correction for kind of each of them, just to kind of give an idea of how you can diversify and how you can protect yourself from any market correction by using different asset classes?
Yeah, absolutely. So really the two asset classes that we touch are residential and then the commercial multifamily space. So the residential, those are the single family homes, the triplexes, the duplexes, the vacation rental spaces. And so, in that market correction that we're always planning for that. And one of those things is we always make sure we have enough in reserves, but really it's just making sure that the property cash flows. It always has to cash flow in any market correction. And that's making sure that I'm buying at the right prices and that the projected rent can basically withstand a market correction, and we're also anticipating a pullback on those rents as well. And so when we underwrite these properties, it's making sure that we can take a 10, 20, 30% haircut on this, and we're still cash flowing. Right now, everything that we're doing, it's cream on the crop. It's great. We love it. And even the vacation rental space, we're making sure, if the vacation rental space crashes, if Airbnb, Vrbo for some reason go away, or there's restrictions put in place, we're making sure that those properties can flow as a long-term rental, so we don't have to sell the property out. We are making sure that those properties underwrite correctly when we purchase. And a lot of people aren't doing that right now. They're just paying $700,000-$800,000. I'm like, I don't know how that's going to cash flow if the ordinances in the town change. But that's my personal risk, that I'm willing to take. The multifamily space, it's just making sure that, we're buying right? You cannot go and pay $4 or $5 million overpriced for, some of these properties. You've got to make sure that NOI and the cash flow makes sense. And you've got to also stress test the property to make sure that, again, you can take that 20, 30, 40% haircut and still float it. Because I think what we're noticing is everybody's paying these exorbitant prices in the market right now. And I'm going to be very interested to watch what happens in the next couple of years. Can these, a large apartment complexes, these, vacation rentals, can they take a haircut and still be okay? And I think no.
That's an excellent topic, right? And I think that also that speaks to all the investors that are buying at like 95%, almost 100% loan to value, or whatever they're buying at those high percentage rates, right? Those high LTVs, right? But I think you're 100% correct. They're definitely not going to be able to keep up with anything unless especially the cash flow. We talked about, just appreciation here today, gone tomorrow, but if you're focused on the cash flow, right? And just like you said, you can take 10 to 20% off and still be cash flowing, right? You'll be all right, because in the long term you can hold and the appreciation will eventually catch up, right? So I think that's an awesome point, especially for those that are using the VA loan to buy maybe duplexes or triplexes, right? I am starting to see that a little bit. And I've talked to some people about that. They're, buying with 0% down, which is okay. I understand that. Yeah. But if it's barely cash flowing, you might be in a bad position, right? So I think that's a perfect point.
Absolutely. You have to be really careful. I had someone talk to me about one of the houses they wanted to buy. It was like a negative cash flow, $1,500. And I'm like, do not do it. This is not worth it. The appreciation is not worth it. What you will pay every year and all the expenses, because there will be a lot of expenses that go with that property, and the negative cash flow, it will catch up to you when it's
by 1,000 paper cuts.
Exactly.
By 1,000 paper cuts.
You mentioned something when you said that you stress test them for your risk level, and I think that was a statement that may have been overlooked by some of the audience members. It's extremely important, again, for everybody to have their criteria, because I love real estate. I really do. I'm all in. But I think the misconception, I've said this before, is that a lot of wealthy people put their money into real estate to hedge against taxes, whereas many of us are putting our money into real estate to grow our wealth. So we're coming from a different approach. So these wealthy individuals can absolutely buy a negative cash flowing property. Why? Because they need to protect themselves from money. So you can't look at Blackstone or all these other people and be like, oh, well, they're doing it, so I can do it. Nah, you need to be able to stress test it, understand your metrics, and go back to understanding what is really important for you and make sure that property can do it. With the Airbnbs, we say the same thing. Obviously, we do loans and we represent you on the realtor side. We'll sell you a $600,000 house, but make sure it makes sense for you and it can work as a long term. I love that strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important. I think people forget that everybody's situation is different. They just focus about what everybody else is doing instead of focusing on your objectives. And you just have to start small, and you start with one property. And I think a lot of folks just focus on the wrong stuff when they're looking at properties instead of the long-term objectives.
Personal finance is personal. Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. So let me ask you this. Now, you've scaled pretty quickly, and now you're all across the East Coast. What does your team actually look like?
They are all over the place, and we hire based off drive and integrity. I mean, like, can we trust you? Those are the two requirements. Everything else we can teach you. Real estate is not hard. I can't teach trust, and I can't teach a drive. Those are the two things that I can't teach. So that's what I really look for when I hire folks. And I've got a lot of great property managers. I've got a lot of great assistants that keep everything organized for me, because I am not organized.
I feel you. That's me.
and they make the wheels go round and round for us. And so I've just been really lucky to find some really good people, network with others. And I got a lot of great referrals from like people like, you should hire this person, you should consider them. And they've turned out to be my rock stars, and they just keep the bus rolling, which is amazing.
How many, sorry. Well, I was gonna say, how many assistants would you say you have? Like property managers aside, because I know most of the time those are third party or outside of the organization. But as far as assistants or people kind of within your company, how many would you say you have roughly?
I have about 3 today. Yeah.
So that goes to show everybody, with essentially a 4-man team, you guys can own millions of dollars across multiple states too. That's freaking amazing.
You can take over the world. No, but so what markets are you primarily focused on, or are you focused on any market? Are you just kind of, again, chasing the actual cash flow itself?
So we're really in the Sunbelt states, and we're really focused on any market that's landlord friendly, right? So, some properties are in New York that I have. I mean, people right now,
that's definitely not landlord.
It's not landlord friendly, but I bought cheap and they cash flow, and there's pains and headaches that come with it. But then some properties are in the Sunbelt, North Carolina, South Carolina, and they do really well, and they're landlord friendly. But it's just making sure that the portfolio again is diversified, and it's just it's really the Sunbelts, and it's just making sure landlord friendly, because markets change, and you're here when you invest, you're here for the long run, and you've got to be able to ride everything out.
Let's talk about that for a second. Landlord friendly states. I mean, we talk about Sunbelt. I know Georgia, Alabama, Florida. Yeah. I don't know about Mississippi, but I know those 3 states for sure are landlord friendly states. Yeah. With that said, why is that so important? Can you give us just give us an idea of what it looks like if you're working in a non-landlord friendly state and you're working in a landlord friendly state?
Yeah, a great example. So I own property in New York, right? And bought them cheap, great cash flow properties during COVID. Thankfully my tenants all paid on time, but they were given the option of not paying utilities. And so the way New York is, they bill the landlord if your tenants don't pay it. And so while I collected rent, I also had to pay the utilities that I normally don't pay. And I could not evict any of my tenants during that time. And so, now the moratorium's over, so things are better, and, people are paying, everything. But that's the difference right there. It's being stuck with certain bills that you typically wouldn't get stuck with, or not being able to evict people from in an apartment. There were times where I wanted to evict some of my tenants, during COVID, but like in North Carolina, it's easier to evict. Texas, Florida, it's easier to evict because they are landlord friendly states, where we have a little bit more rights.
And we're not even talking about during COVID too, because even outside of COVID, just the length of time that it takes to evict a tenant, right? Like in Alabama, you can literally get it done in 3 weeks, man. Like I'm talking about, they're moving, right? But in some states like New York, I think, you actually got to serve them an actual summons, and like there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and it can take a long time, from my understanding.
Absolutely, and they have the right to appeal as well.
We ain't got time for that. Yeah, North Carolina, even during COVID, we were still successfully evicting people, even with the eviction moratorium. So that's a really great point. And it just, again, shows the level of detail you went into as far as searching the markets and all the other good stuff, because understanding exactly which markets you're going to look into, and then even further, probably identifying the sub-markets within those markets, that allows you to move quickly when a deal kind of crosses your lap, right? So now you can move quicker through underwriting and deal analysis. You can put in an offer faster, and sometimes speed kills, guys. Like sometimes just being the first person with a decent offer will get you the deal. It doesn't have to be the highest price. So that's just another powerful strategy as far as growing your portfolio.
100% on that.
So what's next? What are we getting into right now? And I know you talked about syndication a little bit. Where are you where are you in that part of your journey? And then what are you working on now?
Yeah, so I've done some deals passively. We're jumping into actively. We've got some partners. I've got some really smart guys working with me, and so it's just very competitive right now. And we're actively looking. We'll find something. We've got quite a few investors who are interested in participating. It's a great way to hedge the inflation and the taxes. So we're networking, and we're learning a lot of great things along the way. And then, it's just continued to expand the portfolio. It's everything has worked up until today. And so it's not always about building the big empire that most people like to think. It's about the cash flow that really matters at the end of the day. And, I give the guys who do a lot of multifamily syndication a hard time because, my portfolio might be smaller than theirs, maybe not as high, net worth or, value, but I own 100% of my company. I own 100%, and I don't have to have shares. I don't have to, give anybody anything else out of the pie. It is all mine. And with the syndication, you have to share a little bit. That's how you're able to go out and buy these big properties. There's great benefits in it, and that's why we're jumping into it. But we're also making sure we stick to the grassroots of how we started out and just continue to pick the right properties to add to the portfolio that will just continue to grow the cash flow, because that's, at the end of the day, cash flow is king, and that's what's going to keep this business rolling.
I love it.
It's I think the size of the boat is what I heard. Yeah, it's good stuff.
It's the motion of the ocean.
Yeah,
hey, but I think you mentioned that a couple of times too, Mike. That same thing, hey, if I could probably do it all over again, if I had the choice, man, I could probably do 5 or 6 Airbnbs and be cash flowing. A very great amount and a lot less stress as well, right? So it's all about the cash flow, man. Cash flow is king.
Yeah, man. We all live a life of hindsight being 2020. A lot of lessons learned along the way. I'm sure we're going to touch on some of the things that you would have done differently for sure. But you having such a clear picture and understanding that cash flow was your number one goal, it allows you to move forward with just such a clear vision of where the company's going, the type of assets you need, the type of business partners you need. And that alone, probably, correct me if I'm wrong, relieves so much stress when it comes to decision making along the way, because you can quickly say no to the other 99 things that may cross your lap.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so easy to get distracted by the next shiny object.
Yes.
That you've got to remember to stick and focus on the core of your goals or the core functions of your company. And just by, knowing what we're good at and what works well, allows us to focus, to laser focus in, and where we're building relationships with brokers, we're building relationships with property managers, across the country. It's, understanding what we're good at, and then at the same time knowing what we're not good at. And so then we're able to build partnerships with other folks who are good at those things that we're not good at, and that hold the same core values. One of my partners that I have, he's just really good with being out there in front of people. And I'm not one of those types of folks that like to be out there in front of everybody. And so he's good at that. And he does really well with it. I like to sit there and analyze the numbers and drive myself crazy until I get the underwriting just right. And
you're a chaplain. What do you mean you don't like being in front of people? What are you talking about? That's cool. I got you. So Mike talks a lot about that trifecta, right? You want to touch on that, Mike? The trifecta of what you need for a deal.
Absolutely. Basically, I call it the real estate triangle. You either have the money or a need for money, experience, or the deal itself. And so typically you're going to need all three to make a deal happen. So you need to identify where your weakness is at what apex. And you're talking about, obviously you have decent experience, but now you're partnering with people who you said are very smart. Maybe they have different attributes that you don't have, or different experiences that you don't have. Partnering with people who can get you the deal, right? And then being able to scale. And I love everything about this because this shows a very smooth progression that group. Okay, let me ask you this. I'm sorry. So how long have you been real estate investing? It's been about 13 years, correct?
Yeah, about 13 years.
13 years, and now you're across multiple states with multiple $1 million worth of real estate, 100% owned. And many people think that it takes a lifetime to acquire that. But because you had such clear vision, guys, I'm telling you, this is going to be the quote all over everything in this episode. It's just about how clear and concise you are about everything you wanted. I just can't speak on that enough. It's extremely important.
It's very important.
How did you get so clear? I'm curious. How did you get so clear? Did your experience growing up in the real estate world, did that help shape that, or how, where did your clarity come from?
I think it came through, trial and error, right? So not everything has been perfect. Everybody thinks my business has like transformed over the last couple of years where we're super successful, and it hasn't been the case. There were a lot of years where we struggled, many years where we struggled, and it was making those mistakes. And then through making those mistakes, we took action basically, and mistakes were made, and then you learn from those mistakes, and then that's how you kind of refine. But at the same time, I'm pulling in all the smart people to help me figure it out as I go through it, and that's how I became a little bit more focused. And in the grand scheme of things, we're still all figuring it out. Every company continues to morph and change, and just because we're here today, in 10 years we're going to probably, our focus and our lens will probably change again. Cash flow will always probably be the primary pillar that we focus on, but the assets, how we get there, it's probably going to change as the market changes, because everything changes.
Do you have a business plan? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. It's rough. It's not, it's like, on a napkin. And I really have a business plan, but it's what we share with the lenders, we share with our investors. It's really a tool that we use to kind of explain, where we're headed, because when somebody comes to you and they ask to help with investing advice, or, I've got $1 million for you to invest in, they need to have confidence that they know what you're doing with their money. And so that business plan that, just kind of reinforces where we're headed, what we're going to do, what we will do with that money, how we will get your money back. All that's very, very important to outline in a business plan.
Absolutely.
Business plan is 3 words. Cash flow is king.
Yeah. Hey, I'm telling, this is everybody's homework assignment. I want everybody to pause and write this down as a task to do this weekend or this week, is to create a business plan, because I see that most people don't do it. Now, don't get it twisted. If you just plan on getting 5 properties in your lifetime, and then maybe that's it, maybe you don't need a business plan. But the clarity that you will get, just look how Joseph is this is what our business does. These are the markets. This is our strategy. This is what we look for when hiring a team member. All of that's in a business plan, guys. I guarantee it. I know it because I have a business plan too. And that's exactly the stuff that we cover. When you guys sit down and take the time to write out a business plan, your entire path will seem like the yellow brick road. It's going to be all laid out. And then to your point about adapting, I love this analogy, is like IBM. Most people think of IBM as a software company. Well, in reality, today it's a consulting company, and that might actually be outdated. They might be doing something else. But the only reason they existed is because they adapted, and they were flexible with the times. And that's exactly what Joseph's talking about. Yeah, today, always cash flow. That's the baseline. That's the pillar. But single family may not exist 10 years from now. Maybe notes. Might be doing some note investing. You don't know. Yeah. We're going to have you back on if you into that field. But I love it. So everybody do a business plan, man.
Yeah, they're worth it. It's painful. You won't know where to start. You'll do many, many revisions of it, and it'll still look bad, but it grows with you as your company morphs. And I was finding some of my old files today. I'm like, it looked really bad back then, and now it's like, we look pretty legit now. Yeah. And it's just, you watch how you morph, and it's a great way to just to like that retrospective, how much you've grown and where you've started from. It's very easy to forget where you started from. And so like having some of that stuff just is a great reminder.
Definitely. That's actually my favorite part. I carry my little business plan or my goals list and stuff with me on a little sheet right here at all times, but like, it's cool. I think I'm on version 10 right now, but you go back and you see version 1 and what it looked like, and like, how you surpass that, especially if you've been tracking it for a while, how you surpass it, and how, some of those plans kind of may have looked you look at them now and you're like, man, I can't believe that's all I wanted. You know what I mean? Or that's all
Yeah.
I aspired to go after. So it's kind of cool. And I imagine you're going to share those with your kids and things like that. So at least I plan to do that. I think it's a really, really cool thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you had, we're going to start wrapping it up just a little bit here.
Right.
If you had one piece of advice, and I love your experience, it's not just military specific, you have a lot of experience. So if you had one piece of advice for somebody just now starting their real estate journey, what would that be?
I'd say don't let yourself stop yourself from starting. I think we all get self-conscious to a degree where we don't think we're able to, we're smart enough, or we have enough energy to keep going as we're juggling so many different things in our lives. You just have to keep going, and you've got to figure out how you're going to make it a priority. If this is something that you want to do in real estate, and you want to be an active investor, then you've got to make it a priority. And it's just knowing about, where you're at in life. And so that's why I always say, don't let yourself stop yourself from moving forward. There were times where business was not good, right? And there were times where I allowed myself to stop moving forward. And so that's why I always say, keep going, move in the right direction. And don't let don't limit yourself from moving forward.
Excellent. Excellent. So how can we reach out to you? How can our listeners hear from you and find out about you?
Yeah, they can reach me. So we're on simplifiedrei.com. You can send me an email at joseph@simplifiedrei.com, or you can find me on Facebook. I'm the only Joe Danza out there. With a headshot and all that good stuff, or on Instagram, and we're on LinkedIn as well. So same headshot.
Excellent. Hey, well, it's been a pleasure. Loved what you brought, the amount of value you brought here. I'm sure everyone listening is going to have to listen to this a couple times just to get some of those nuggets, man. It's been great. Excellent conversation.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Well, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment below. I'm sure Joe will get in the comments and answer your questions if you have any questions directed at him, right? If you on Facebook, make sure you join our Facebook group. If you listen to this on podcast, do us a favor, leave us a review, an honest review. We appreciate those. We actually do read those. It's awesome. And with that, this is Dan Wynn.
And Mike Glassby.
Signing off.